and move into U.S. politics, starting with Sarah Raskin's withdrawals from the federal board nomination. Now, one of the stories that we did not get to cover last week was Sarah Raskin's withdrawing from the Federal Board of Governors nomination process. We are covering it this week because of revelations that broke late last week about why her nomination was scuttled. As some of you may be aware, Joe Manchin and Republicans had expressed reservations about her nomination due to concerns around energy. The primary concern is that her past work in academia had called on the Federal Reserve and banks in general to prepare for climate action. Not only that, but the Fed should play a positive role in clean energy transition, shifting funding away from fossil fuels and towards clean energy. It is these beliefs that prompted Joe Manchin to say, quote, her previous statements have failed to satisfactorily address my concerns about the critical importance of financing an all of the above energy policy to meet our nation's critical energy needs. Now, as a result of Manchin's opposition, Raskin chose to withdraw herself from consideration on March 15th because the opposition to her was holding up all the other nominations. Now, what has not been widely reported, though, is that Joe Manchin attended Sarah Week, a top energy conference put on by S&P Global, a week before his opposition was made public. At the conference, Manchin candidly revealed his own stake in the fight. Not only that, but Manchin's own history is replete with conflicts of interest when it comes to energy policy. Before we get into those troubling statements made at the conference, let's talk a little bit about Manchin's history. Now, for those that may not be aware, Joe Manchin is an energy guy. Much of his family wealth comes from a coal-related venture he co-founded in 1988, Enersystems. Enersystems serves as a middleman broker between coal mining operators and energy companies. It deals in coal waste that can be used to produce energy, and it engages in lobbying efforts. In one such deal, Enersystems brokered the use of coal waste to be used in the Grant Town power plant. Then, while governor, Manchin's administration approved a rate increase from $27.25 to $34.25 per megawatt hour, and an extension of the company's contract from 2028 to 2032. Now, the rate increase itself resulted in an additional $4.2 million for the plant's operator, Mon Power, and fees paid to Eversystems has netted the Manchin family $5 million between 2010 and 2020, with $500,000 of that coming in 2020 alone. But that's not all. Manchin also served as state chair of ALEC and as a national director in 1994. Now, ALEC stands for the American Legislative Exchange Council and is part of the Koch network. ALEC works to craft template legislation for state governments to make them more energy friendly and lobby state legislatures to pass ALEC-approved bills. ALEC-sponsored legislation includes approving strip mining operations, mandatory arbitration laws for environmental impact suits, eminent domain schemes, etc. Now, if it was not clear from the above, Manchin has consistently used his position as a politician to enrich himself. He has consistently denied such attacks, but at Sarah Week's conference, he eliminated all possible doubt. During his speech at Sarah Week, Manchin said, referring to his position as a quote-unquote energy guy, "We haven't been good at, I say we, the leadership of energy in our country. We haven't told our story. There's an old story in politics. Tell your story first, before someone else does. It's hard to play defense. It's much easier to run an offensive play than make any adjustments." And then, continuing on, he stated, quote, "There are not one of us," now referring to himself as a politician, "that doesn't come to you saying, 'Will you help me? Can you help me get the finances I need right now?' You all have been very successful. You make great decisions and you've done very well in your life for yourselves and your family and those around you. Use the same type of approach when you have politicians that come and ask you for support that you do when you make a financial decision for yourself and your family. You want a return on investment." So, what does this mean? Well, if it's not clear, Joe Manchin is the Koch brothers man in West Virginia. He is very much wedded to and has extreme conflicts of interest when it comes to voting on and for or whatever dealing with energy policy, especially when it comes to coal operations, because his family is so wedded to coal itself. Now, he claims that there are people in his orbit. I'm sorry, let me roll that back a little bit. He claims that all his assets are in a blind trust. However, the company that he co-founded in 1988 is ran by his son, Joe Manchin IV. The fourth, right? Anyway, that's neither here nor there, though. And knowing that, there is no way that the blind trust could actually be enforceable. If you have a family business and that family business is still controlled by your family, any vote that you take in regards to that business is going to come off as suspect. Now, the mainstream press has not reported on this as extensively as they should, in my opinion. That is not to say that they haven't reported on his corruption and conflicts of interest in the past. I'm specifically talking about in the last 2 weeks when he attended this energy conference. The quotes that I got for you today came from The Republic, while other things came from Bloomberg and Politico. In the past, these news organizations have covered this a bit more extensively, but I think now it is baked into the process, and so they don't feel like it is newsworthy anymore. But how much have you heard about this? How has it filtered down to you? That is why we at Crowdsource Politics are talking about this today. And as Telemachus Rex says, it is rank corruption. There is no question about it. This is why there are bills coming into the forefront of policy discussion around whether or not senators and congressmen and their families should be able to trade individual stock, how much of this they should control themselves, how do blind trust work. It would be very good if there was some more laws to this, where if you yourself are directly tied to an industry, your vote doesn't count in the voting process. But it does, but not removing it from the majority, if that makes sense. Like, you got to balance the two-party system with any change that you create, or you're just going to end up giving that vote over to somebody else. Maybe instead they can't filibuster any bills. That's an option as well.